This is a piece of animation from a student of mine who is in need of feedback. So let's have a look. We already had a look at this animation a few weeks ago, I think. The student was trying to do some blocking for it. We decided to go for a layered animation approach in which we block out and partially refine the body first and then we do the rest. And it seems like this approach has paid back. So first of all, I'm going to have a look at it composition-wise to see also if we have an environment. Then I'm going to go into what probably needs tweaking in this animation. And finally, I'm going to suggest a way to move forward from this state. So we have some indication of composition here. So the student has opted for a low poly environment. The story right now isn't much clearer than it was earlier on. One of my first pieces of feedback was to decide why was the guy jumping, because that could have helped a lot. However, the camera work seems to compensate partially for the story. Camera work is never a substitute for story, but if right now you can't think of anything to make this work, then camera work is better than nothing, and an environment and a good render as well. This can still be a good portfolio piece, although it will be just about the pure body mechanic side instead of the story side. As far as the background is concerned, this might work. It's a bit harder now to judge this without having the full character. I think my suggestion for this step would be to take a snapshot of this and do a photo bash with the character in it as well, so that you start to decide what's the light like in there. And you will see if you need to change the color of the character or if you need to change anything in the look of the character to make it look more integrated in the background, or the other way around. So as far as background, these would be the points of action, I would say. As far as the animation is concerned, I think you are in a good position where the main torso is doing more or less what it needs to be doing, but there is a point in which I don't think it's working too well, and at the same time you are at a stage in which you can start to add detail, in my opinion. Remember, we went for this sort of layered approach. We do one part, we make sure that works, and so forth. So I think we are graduating from the first pass on the body, and we are aiming for a more refined approach now. I think one of the biggest issues I see in terms of macro body motion is the position of the head. I mean, the base of the neck, I would say, seems to be rotating very much around the axis of the body at all times. At the beginning in here, this arc of the body is a bit strange because it's going up this way and then suddenly it moves up vertically. While the body of the kid, if you think of it, starts with a line of action like this, with a pendulum movement with the pivot right here. So the pendulum is going to push the weight up, which means that this leg down here will push, and it will push back, the weight will push up in this direction, and the body will tend to go in this direction. So it's a bit strange to see your body go up vertically in here. Maybe you have another camera in which this is a bit clearer. Let's have a look. Great, thank you for sending another camera, that makes it a lot easier. It's funny because you are indeed following the reference in here, but since your character goes from here to here to match the reference, what's happening is that you're making it translate quite a lot in this direction, with the result that the next movement will be on the way up because you're now matching the reference. And this arc is broken because you weren't matching the reference earlier on. So what's going on in here as the guy turns is that you see that the body is already going in this direction. The buttock stays there for a long time, while your character needs to then do a jump diagonally to match the reference at a later point, and then it will need to follow the reference, which means going up. That's why you break the arc. So in here, I think you are forcing the buttock to move quite a lot in just 3 frames. So you're creating this momentum on this side, but then you're ignoring it. There's nothing wrong with not following the reference one-to-one, although if you introduce this kind of momentum, then you have to manage it in the next frame. So you have to take a decision there. You either put this guy on a layer, the whole thing on a layer, and you set a key on around 69, say, and then another key on around 72, and you make sure that the body doesn't travel as much. You're not tracing the reference, you're just tracing the spacing between 2 poses of a reference. So the other solution is you keep the diagonal motion you created in here at around frame 72, and you manage it in the next frame. So you made it this far, you're getting it. So I think you can take a decision there without me telling you go this way or go that way. Well, of course, if you need more precise feedback, you tell me and we go through it. But I think you are getting it. The thing that you're not getting yet, in my opinion, is the rotation of the body while we are up in the air. Once we are up in the air, I was saying earlier on before being interrupted by myself, we rotate around this pivot. Please notice how stable that pivot is for 3 frames. The body is rotating fully around that pivot, and that means that the head is very stable and it's just rotating around the base of the neck. In that time, your head is moving all over the place, your base of the neck, it's translating quite a lot, and then even more, and then stops. So in there, the arc of the base of the neck is going to be a problem. One solution you could adopt to fix it, because much depends on the rotation axis you have in your controls and the rotation order, which at the beginning of a shot, especially if you are not so experienced, you always get wrong. I mean, I still get that stuff wrong. I mean, sometimes I get them right, but sometimes I think, what was I thinking there? If you are realizing that the rotation order is what is holding you back from doing that, you can do probably 2 things. One is to convert the rotation order of your animation so that you can decide which rotation order is more suitable for that part of the animation. So you don't care anymore about the previous part, that's sorted. So you just convert the animation to a rotation order that works to solve that particular rotation of the neck. And the other one is to create an additional controller. And if you look for a YouTube channel named Alessandro Camporota and you look at his parkour tutorial, you will find that he uses that technique of creating an additional controller to just enhance the cleanup of his animation. Both techniques are equally as good, so that would be my bigger area of concern in terms of macro movement of the body. That part there, the arcs are just a bit all over the place. And then there was something about the landing, which is a minor thing, I think, but I'm very curious to have a look at it, because I noticed that when I was examining your references. So one thing that the guy is doing as he falls down is that he falls down and then he starts going back towards the back of his spine. It goes down and then converts that down energy to back energy. If I track the head in particular, you see how it goes to the back. I think it's possible that since arm is pushing to the back, from the top view, let's say this is the top view, the spine is going a bit this way, and thus you feel like the kid is actually compressing. But I think it must be something in the rotation of the spine there. So that's something you may want to look into, because it will improve the quality of your landing. But these are 2 biggest issues that I see at a first glance. The rest seems to be working quite okay, I think, but you will get dirty motion in the head if you keep those arcs for the base of the neck. Also, between 63 and 66, you have quite a lot of chest rotation there, while the kid doesn't really have much. So that might push your head in 3D somewhere else. You might have a lot of translation on your head for reasons that you find difficult to explain. So maybe that motion is not needed that much. Maybe you can tune it down by 50%. You can do that on a layer, of course. Let's see the top view just to see if I spot anything in the other views. You actually see the problem of the arcs of the neck even in this view in here, where the neck all of a sudden in just 1, 2, 3 frames is rotating completely, and the body also is rotating completely, while you see how much easier the kid flows into that pose. And then you have this weird motion in which you twist quite a lot down here, and then you start moving to the side. See that? That's a bit strange. I think you should be starting the movement to the side almost already here, if not any earlier, at 79, so that you will have a nicer arc on the way down. Because you see how when you twist, it's the twist that moves you to the right hand side of the camera in here. It's not really something that happens after the twist. So I think you can start earlier. And that's particularly visible also from the top view, where the head is moving in this direction, the base of the neck moves in this direction, but then all of a sudden it starts moving in this direction, breaking the arc. And then this pin is not around the base of the neck. And also it's a bit strange that the chest is here, and when it's done, the chest moves this much up. So that may be also a matter of concern. If this were correct, the chest should be moved. We should be seeing the chest going probably to camera left. So I will draw the chest in here. And I think it's not going that much to camera left, if anything at all. Although it definitely seems like it could go there. So I think that's another area where you could polish a bit. They're all minor stuff. Okay, all this stuff is very, very little stuff. Now that you graduated from the basic rough root rotation and you went into the body itself, it's time for you to start considering what the pelvis does in there. Because I was looking at the reference and I had this feeling that between 29 and 34, the right side of the hip is moving up and the left side seems to be moving down. You see that there is quite some action going on there, while your character doesn't have any. So I think you need to consider that. As you address the notes that I just given, if you want, of course, I would already start implementing that kind of stuff, because it feels that the body is under control for the most part. So I think you can start thinking also of that part. And then again, at 36, you see that the pelvis is swinging to a certain amount, but the chest is swinging a lot more than the pelvis. Okay, look at the chest was full profile and it goes almost frontal to us, and while the pelvis was already fairly visible in there, and it rotates a little bit. So in here you have to rotate, in my opinion, the chest a lot more if you can. I mean, look at the pose in here. It's showing us the back of the arm. Now you can start thinking about arms. So this guy is showing us the back of the arm. So I think you can even go as far as maybe making one pose there for the back of the arm, just to get an idea of how the chest is rotated. Because the problem you're having now is that you manage to control the body, but now you need to build the anatomical basis to be able to judge how the body is rotated. And at the beginning, that's very difficult to do it if you haven't studied anatomy first, or if you aren't used to look at anatomy. So I think if you put the arm in there, as you extend the arm forward, the arm will tell you, look, you need to rotate the chest a bit more. And the chest will tell you, look, you probably need to rotate a little bit that pelvis as well. So if that helps, you can maybe drop down the very basic key poses of the arm. And I suggest maybe, I think you can keep the arm in local for the blocking, just so that you put down the key poses, and then as the body rotates, the arm rotates with it, so that you will have the key poses under control and they will come to you easier because the body does some of them for you. And then eventually you will probably need to convert that arm to global to make sure that you can really clean it. So probably that's how I would tackle that part. So I was saying in here, look at how much earlier this guy is showing us the buttocks and your guy is a bit late. And you look at how much more twisted the chest is. This arm doesn't, the right arm isn't even visible. So I think this chest will need to be rotated a lot more clockwise in there. And you can start thinking about this kind of stuff now that you got the main body motion. After all, if you twist the chest a bit more, the chest still twists around the neck. For as long as your neck doesn't go left and right, you should be okay. I can't really tell what's going on in there in terms of line of action of the spine. I think you retimed your animation, which is sort of okay. You know that in Maya you can key the current frame that is visible on the image plane, so that if you need to retime your animation, you can retime the reference as well. That makes it a lot easier to work. So for instance, you know how when we have an image plane which is composed by an image sequence, you can tick that box on and now the image plane will play. But one thing you can do is to break that connection, delete that expression and say on frame 1, I want you to be there, and then on frame 32, you could say frame 32, in which case the animation will play real time, but maybe you want it to be a bit faster, so you input 50. So now the animation will play a bit faster in here. And then in here, maybe you can input, I don't know, 55, so that now it will only play 5 frames between here, 32 and 60. And this way you can retime your reference plane so that it meets your needs. So that's a possible solution. And I think in terms of line of action here, you have another requirement to meet probably. It seems to me that this is the line of action, and it seems to me that your kid, this guy is a bit straight on there on 171. Let's have a look. I think in here your line of action is way too straight. I feel like you should still be a little bit more that way since you're still pushing, and then you can possibly push straighter later on. I think you have to start thinking in terms of rotation of the pelvis there. I suspect that the pelvis would be lower towards the left leg in here. So that would be the pose that you're going to do, I suspect. And then, so I suspect that the pelvis here, actually the pelvis will be open here. I suspect the pelvis will become almost a profile pelvis if you think of it, because it will be pushed somewhere to the back. So in fact, pretty much you see, if this area is the core, the groin area of the character, then that groin area will become a line in there. So I think you have to take that into consideration as you refine this pass. So environment wise, we discussed it. Story wise, we discussed this. And body wise, we discussed it. Now we have a next step, which is tweaking the twist of the chest and adding the twists of the pelvis. And once that is done, I wouldn't refine the body anymore, but I would focus on the limbs at that stage. You can maybe start with the legs. However, since it's not likely maybe it's going to be difficult for you to identify the anatomical twists required in there without any point of reference, you may want to already block out the arms. As I said, you can start in local and then you could convert them to global at a later stage as you have the key poses jotted down. So that will give you a bit more information. Once you have that, you can maybe hide the arms again, or you can keep them there and you can do the legs. Or if you think you can do the twists already without the arms, you can start and do the legs, for instance, which would also help. It would be a good idea if the controller of the legs were following the body. That would be a really good idea as you fly through the air, because it would make your animation a lot easier. Maybe you can do the first half of the blocking with the space set to global, and then maybe as he jumps, as he kicks off, you can go to local and just follow the body. Then maybe that could be a thing. It's faster usually to use Morgan Loomis space converter to convert the two spaces. I think that was it. It's great progress. You have to be very careful about the arc of the base of the neck, because that's a very delicate area, and you could give some love to the pelvis and the twist of the chest. Be careful about that pivot on the neck, and I can't wait to see the next iteration. Well done. Have fun.
Very good for blood circulation, heart problem, hormone problem.